UK Garage with Phonetix and BrainZ.
Long time, bruv, long time.
Yes, mate, we meet again. Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it?
It's been forever. I honestly can't remember how long ago it was, but it was far too long ago. This is Evil episode 13.
Yeah, well, it was cursed from before we even got going, really, wasn't it then? Number 13, maybe that's why it's taken so long to get together. I apologise for my bad diary management, which has led to the sort of lapse in the usual 4-week interim period between the episodes. It's one of those things.
There's all sorts of bugs going around and all, because, I mean, I was taken down with it. Like, my last radio show, I did the biggest clang I've done for, like, the last 10 years, and someone legitimately said to me, "Have you got a new microphone?" And I'm like, "No, I've just got a really bad cold." It was probably COVID, but I tested negative. You know what? We haven't done the classic intro. This is the BrainZ, live from the BrainZ cave.
I'm Phonetix from SHOSH FM headquarters.
Up in the studio, it's looking as fancy as ever, mate. Fully loving it. But yeah, so I was taken down with the illness. You was a little bit rough as well, weren't
you? Yeah. I finally managed to evade COVID for the first couple of years, but it finally got me. It was a weird one. So I've definitely been more ill with other things, but it was strange is the best way I could explain it. Do you know what I mean? But I think that's the general consensus. The whole thing's just a bit fucking weird, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it was bait because I went to one of my first parties, like a family party that I had, where there was a shit ton of people there. Like I hadn't been to one for years because of all of the lockdowns. And then the next day, the missus gets the ping. She gets the track and trace. You've been close exposure notification, basically. And then the next thing you know, she's getting ill and she's like, "Oh, it's just a cold." And she was testing negative. And then, anyway, what do you say? It's always a cool story with COVID, isn't it? I'm back. I'm sounding less Barry White and more Barry Shite. But it's all good. It's all good. There's been so much music since we was last met. Like, so much music.
Mate. There has, if we'd done an episode a few weeks back, then I had my list nicely rounded down to 10, and then texted you last night, didn't I, saying, "Look, I can't do 10 this month. There's just been too much stuff, so we've got an even 15 each, haven't we, instead?" But yeah, plenty there. And even that, getting it down to 15, I must admit I struggled. I was sitting here with my list, swapping bits in and out. So apologies to those deserving people who've been left off, because there are plenty.
I had to leave out a load of bootlegs because I know you're all like, "Oh, if they're bootlegs off of SoundCloud, I can't get them on Spotify for our fantastic Spotify playlist." If you haven't listened to that, that's in the ukgarage.com/recommends. I'm practicing, mate. I'm practicing.
Nicely done.
But yeah, so literally, it was a phenomenal freebie EP from MKJ, and he done this bootleg on there of a deep house tune, or it's like a deep house kind of tune, and then he's used Between the Sheets, Isley Brothers in the background of it. It's a 4/4 tune. It's bad boy. It's so good.
He's doing some things at the minute, MKJ, isn't he? Like everything I'm hearing, is pleasantly impressing me each time. He's got a good vibe. Definitely.
Completely. Well, look, like you said, we've got a shit ton of music to talk about since the last episode, so should we just jump into our first pick? Would you like to introduce it?
I would indeed. The first pick is available now on Banana Club. It's a cracker called Criminal Riff, and it's by Rhades and FM-3.
Some money. But who had it first? Stole so many, so much it ain't funny. Now I gotta pay some money. See, no rockin' in the pocket, alley, 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 pocket, alley. But who had it first? Come on. Politician passes. Come on. Making sure they like it. Passing up
Wicked pick, bro. Wicked pick.
Oh, mate. It was one of those ones as well that, like, and I apologise if I'm wrong in saying so, but I haven't seen anything from Banana Club before. So it was one of those ones that I was on Juno and I was just perusing and clicked it by chance, not expecting anything of it, and that jumped out. And you got that kind of catchy little riff at the start, and I was just like, oh yeah, I like this. And then the bass kicked in the drop, and I was like, oh, nice. Just an all-round pleasant surprise to get. And yeah, went straight into my sets. Been repping that on Trickstar, and yeah, had to get discussed, I feel. It's wicked.
Banana Club's got loads of wicked Spanish breaks. I'm trying to think. Pavane has got a few bits on there that's been doing things.
Have they been? Because I apologise then. I'm obviously late to the party on Banana Club. But, Pavane, I've definitely picked up a few bits by recently. He's been doing some cool stuff and quite a varied sort of cross section of UKG as well. Do you know what I mean? He's quite stylistically kind of bounces around. But I didn't pick up on.
I'm pretty sure all the usual Spanish suspects are on there. So you got Rhades FM-3 on this one, right? Then there's Pavane. I'm sure Bowser's been on it. I don't know how many of the 83 gangs in there, but there's the main kind of labels. This is one of them, along with Galchinchi is doing massive things at the moment, and then obviously 83 is just up there. Just all of them Spanish guys are smashing it. I was excited to have this one in the lineup because I had it in the kind of the best of the rest, and it was to describe it as something like, do you like Public Enemy, Spanish breaks, a Spanish guitar, and heavy bass line, then this one is for you. Like, it's a weird cross-section mashup of vibes.
That's a great little summary right there. I think you hit the nail on the head, and it's really slickly done as well, because like you say those kind of elements on paper don't look like they're going to go together very well, but actually then when you get someone as skilled as those two put it together, and it bangs, doesn't it? It's wicked. I'm looking forward to hearing that drop in a club.
Yeah, I mean, Rhades is I mean, I love the stuff that FM3 does, but I see him mainly collab, whereas like Rhades obviously puts out loads of stuff on his own. He's wicked, so much talent there. Say Spain does it again, and we gush over Spain so much.
We do, without fail, don't we? I think it's the only representative of Spain we've got in the list today. Oh no, tell a lie, we might have some others. I think we've got some others further down in the best of the rest section. Yeah, no. Was it UKG Capital? You always say.
It was UK Garage Country of the Year. It was 2020, wasn't it? I don't know. It was a long time ago. We changed out the awards last year. Should we move on to my next pick?
Let's do it.
So, my next pick is with a dynamic female duo in UK Garage. On this one, we've got SHOSH and Kelsey with a tune called N Love.
Okay, baby, you know I'm wrong, maybe you're right, I'm mistaken, you know, and I can't take it back from now. I understand why.
I think we've got all the elements in there that I want to talk about. I'm sure this was probably a surprising pick in terms of what you've seen me normally pick. I love my wonky ones. I love my bass heavy ones. This could easily be dismissed as, money for old rope, rehashed old school UK garage, just trying to do 98 all over again. And, I listened to it and I thought I was going to be allergic to it before I'd even press play. And I listened to it and I loved it. And I think, the instrumental is it's got kind of that Sunship, old school Sunship vibe, right? It's cleanly mixed and mastered to sound kind of banging, like the levels are hitting on it. But I think the vocal doubly makes it. Like the main thing I love about this tune is the vocal. Like Kelsey's vocals are wicked. I love the different styles of singing that she's got on it. It's all very modern. I think her voice is amazing, and it's just a real. It was making me feel good just listening to it, and that's why I picked it, Rob.
Anytime I see a Kelsey feature, it's always exciting because I've been a massive fan of her for a long, long time. I remember she used to upload like videos to YouTube, didn't she, of her like singing in front of her computer. She'd pick out like topical hits, and then she'd obviously write her own songs and sing those. And I contacted her back then, and we're going back like, I don't know, like 12, 13 years ago. I remember sending her an email being like, oh, you've got a voice, like let's work on something. Never happened, as you know, as sometimes just pans out, but it's always a pleasure to hear her doing things. She did some stuff with some of the grime guys as well, which I quite enjoyed in years gone by. So yeah, and she delivers. Do you know what I mean? She's got a knack for writing catchy little hooks, and the vocal range. I don't feel she doesn't show off a massive range in this track, so it's not a good example of that necessarily. But like she's got quite a big range, and she really does that flawlessly. You're right in saying I was surprised to see it shortlisted, because when I looked at the paper and saw you'd written it down, I was like, oh, you know, it just because, and not because there's anything wrong with the track, just because this is you, someone who's known for kind of wobbly, wonky bass lengers and stuff, and I was like, oh, I didn't envisage you picking that one, but as you say, it's nicely done. It's quite slick. It's on CR2 as well, right? Which is a pretty good label to be releasing on. I don't know what kind of damage it's done in terms of sales, but I could definitely hear that smashing up daytime radio. I don't really listen to radio much, if I'm honest, these days. I never seem to find time for it, but I would imagine Kiss is playing that in the day.
You're asking the wrong guy, mate. And
if they're not, they shouldn't. If they're not, they should be, because you know, they definitely play other stuff which isn't on, you know, isn't as tasty. So yeah, props to Shosh and Kelsey for, you know, like you say, it's not covering any new ground by any means, but what it is doing, it's doing nicely. Is it something I'd play in my sets? It probably doesn't fit with kind of my little niche that I push. But that's not to say there's anything wrong with it. It's just, you know, garage is a big umbrella, and I kind of tend to go down that kind of jazzier route, obviously. But I can see that there will be a lot of people that will be all over this, and definitely it's one of those ones you can see going off sort of outside of garage raves potentially as well. If you dropped it in your local Yates's or O'Neill's, you know what I mean? It's going to appeal to that kind of wider cross section that likes a good kind of catchy vocal as opposed to other elements of garage. I feel like there's a lot of, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of garage that's being made that wouldn't necessarily cross over so well, but like you get something like this, like you say, it's got Sunship written all over it, hasn't it? And the reason that Sunship was the go-to remixer for the majors for so many years was because he kind of had that little recipe dialed, didn't they? And I think Shosh has done quite a good job of. I don't want to say emulating it. It sounds like you're.
No, because modern Sunship, I'm not generally been going for recently. You know, I've got a lot of respect for him, but his new stuff ain't really been hitting for me. This is kind of like he's kind of moved away from garage a bit, isn't he, Sunship? Like I know I keep shortlisting every time we have like a list of discussion topics for Gassing. I want to talk about Sunship's jazz, and you always go, we can't talk about that because I haven't fucking listened to it. He's doing more of that kind of like down tempo and jazz stuff. He's doing a wicked. Like if you haven't checked out the Kerry Evans Spotify page, go and check it out because it's fucking like it's legitimately decent, like solid jazz that stands up against a lot of the stuff from the jazz greats, in my humble opinion. But yeah, obviously he's doing less in the garage realm. I've noticed that actually there's been a tendency in general with a few of the older bods that have been present throughout garage's history in recent years have kind of faded away, because like MJ's not been doing a massive amount. He obviously did the Navos remix last year, which was massive, and he put out the EP, the one that had that Strings for Jody on it. But in general terms, his output hasn't reduced, but he's been doing less garage, isn't he? He's just done a garage sample pack is the last thing I've seen him do, like literally this week, right? He has.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that's a Splice thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I saw. I think I got a advert up on Insta or something. Yeah, it caught my eye. I haven't checked it out yet, but I dare say it will be excellent. I shall have a little look at that when I get.
It's got Laura Vane vocals on it as well for
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I follow Laura on the socials actually because she does some really interesting stuff, and she does some quite interesting social posts actually. If you don't follow her, she's one of those people who kind of pours her heart out a bit on social media, so that's always interesting to see what she's going to say. But obviously she stays busy in music. But I think we all kind of remember her from the bad boy, prolific days and assumed that she was going to be a sort of mainstay in garage, but obviously she moved on to other things, and good luck to her. Wicked vocalist though, got all the time in the world for her.
Indeed. Anyway, final verdict on N Love from Robbie Phonetix is needs more trumpets. There you go, Shosh. Should we move on to our next pick?
Track, to be fair, wouldn't I?
Yeah.
Next one was a no-brainer for me. I actually had this as my number one originally, and then Criminal Riff picked it to the post right at the last minute there. But it's just a sublime production available on South Point by Clarcq, with an interesting spelling, and the name of the track is Touch.
Bumpy business.
Oh, it's a wicked track. There's so many things I could say about it as well. It's beautiful. It's really slickly done, and I think what stands out to me is its real strength is in the arrangement and the way it builds. And then it kind of builds to a point where you think it's going to drop, and then it kind of drops into that little breakdown with the pads, and then it kicks in. It's just so nicely done. It's a really creative way of doing it, and quite fun to mix with as well. And I must apologise to Clarcq if I'm late to the party. But this was the first thing I've heard of his. And the production levels on it blew me away because like the mix down is so clean, everything's got its space, the sound design is wicked. I love what he's done like in terms of chopping the vocal like that. I love that bouncy bass, I love those kind of bouncy 4/4 things when they drop it. It takes me back to the lost years, and he's pulled a lot of my favourite elements of garage together and come up with a really nice tune. And I apologise to him because I know I played it on my show and I misspelt his name when I track listed it. That was why I made the comment about the interesting spelling on his name, because it's CLARCQ, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think I must have written it down 3 or 4 times wrong before I looked at the artwork and went, oh shit, I really ought to remember the Q, otherwise it's just not going to go anywhere. People are going to be clicking on the wrong profiles and whatnot. But yeah, South Point, doing it again. They're a very, I feel, underappreciated label. You talk about your big labels in garage, and like there are ones that spring to mind like Garage Shed and Night Bass and Kiwi, right? South Point without fail deliver the goods. I feel like they deserve more of a nod than they arguably get, because they've got some really strong tracks and artists on their roster, and this is a good example of that.
I know, I've supported South Point for as long as I've known about them, and they have the whole South Point Presents series where they bring through new artists. Found some amazing artists. That's probably where I found Clarcq first, to be honest. I mean, they kind of surf though between kind of the darker, almost like grime and dubsteppy side, right, as well as solid UKG. So there's the mix means that it's not always on the radar. But yeah, South Point's banging. I mean, yeah, Clarcq. The minute I heard my first Clarcq tune, I knew there was talent and high quality for sure. Like everything you said about the way that it's been put together and mixed down, completely on point. This was not my favourite Clarcq tune since our last show. Please tell me you've listened to that.
Rest list,
have you listened to Do It To Me?
I have, but it's going to sound really bad me saying that I can't remember it, and I don't think that's an insult to the tune. I think it's just because I've listened to so much recently that it's been hard to even I've struggled to stay on top of it all.
Mate, I mean, I
we're going to get to that one anyway.
Well, it's in my best of the rest, but it is such a well done tune. I wanted to make sure I mentioned it here because I would say if I had to pick one of the two, I would have picked that. That's fine. Me and you have got different vibes and tastes, right? So that's why we do this,
mate. Indeed. Can I just interject and randomly apologise to anyone who's watching the YouTube feed who wonders why I keep looking down at my feet? I've actually acquired a puppy since the last episode, and she's politely pulling on my headphones every time you press play and nearly pulling them out my ear. So if I'm looking down, it's because I'm fighting to get the wire out of her mouth. It's all fun and games.
Well done.
Anyway,
well done.
On to the next one, mate.
I'm loving the Die Hard vibes you've got going on. Shaved head, white vest. It's good.
Do you know what? I hadn't even made the link there. I was thinking, I watched WrestleMania last week and Stone Cold Steve Austin made his surprise return, didn't he? So that was the inspiration. I've been watching a bit of Broken Skull Session.
Actually,
yeah, you didn't see that?
Your fangirl cosplaying. No, that was when I was out at my my COVID party that I was talking about.
I need a Austin 316 t-shirt. I don't know. I'm slacking.
Yes.
Slacking.
I'm not going to say anything about wrestling fans because I have my door beaten down by angry people. Should we move on to the next one?
Absolutely, let's do it.
So I wanted to keep it diverse. So the next one is a bit of a more chilled out pick. This is by someone called Indigo Eyes, and it's featuring a vocalist called Blushko, and the track is entitled Feel It.
Only you can save me from the pressure. You won't let me down. Come be my lover. Baby, it's just you and I. So come and put your lips on mine. Can I have your kiss one time? If you feel it too. If you feel it, tell me your dreams. I'll hold them with me. I'll take what you need. If you feel it, I'll be what you want. I might do some wrong, but it won't be for long. If you feel it, tell me your dreams. I'll hold them with me. I'll take what you need. If you feel it, I'll be what you want. I might do some wrong, but it won't be for long. If you feel that.
Hard tune,
Mate, you're just full of surprises today, aren't you? It's like Mr. Brains is just like calmed massively since the last episode or something.
What's my last pick?
It's beautiful.
I'm just seeing whether that's going to... Yeah, don't worry, the last pick
I was going to say, you're going to throw out a wild card with a langer. Is Blushko the vocalist then?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. That's a really nice vocal execution. It's got like shades of... Like I was listening to bits of it, and like the way the voice was going kind of had shades of Sam Smith in it, and then other bits of it kind of reminded me of Prince almost. Like you wouldn't think you would put those two artists together, but if they had a love child, I like to think that it would sound like that. No, really, like just lovely. That's really first time I'm hearing that. I must admit, I missed your last show. I've just been off the radar a bit, but yeah, I'm assuming you played it in there. First time I'm hearing it, but I'm loving it. Really enjoyed that.
I actually need to check because I think I'm just doing a very unprofessional thing of double checking now, but I started. Not my last show with it, so it must have been a show back in March. Yeah, it was back at the end of March. I'd started the show with it then.
It's been that long since we did an episode.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible.
You're just highlighting our inadequacies there.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a real. It was let's say the vocals it's real warm. And it just feels good, and then it's like the kind of the ad libs on the keys there that we heard right at the end is really nice. The whole sound design is just really nice. It gave me good feelings again, and I loved it because it was a modern take on the genre once again that still kind of hit all of the right places for me in terms of the sound levels and types that my ears really like. And the vocal was really, really appealing. And yeah, it's just I thought it was a great tune. And I always worry about these things because I should double check, because obviously this is when I've found this tune. This tune could be well old and I've only just heard it. I hope that's not the case.
Do you know, I mean, I know we try to be up to date on that, and what kind of a podcast would we be if we weren't, but equally, like, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing if you flag something from a while back that people might have missed. Because there are, like, I mean, we've highlighted it many times, haven't we? The fact that there's so much music coming out. The downside to that is so much stuff is getting overlooked. And like, I guarantee it, like, I had a short list of about 40 tracks to whittle down to my 15, and there will be someone there that probably a lot of people haven't heard that will end up going sort of under the radar. Do you know what I mean? It's a shame, but like, you know, that's the unfortunate byproduct of loads of quality music, and you know, it's a necessary evil when you're enjoying all the new stuff coming out. But no, I tell you what struck me about that track when you were playing it was kind of ironic, because you always moan about tracks that are too musical from the get-go. You want a nice 16 32-bar drum intro, and there you go, picking something that starts with just keys. I almost called you right there and then and went, stop, you can't have this one. But
that's why I had to start the show with it, mate, because there was no drums to mix with.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Cool. Yeah. All right. I'll queue up your last pick if you'd like to introduce it.
Should we get a bit more mental now? Let's drop into our wild card bit, because we're both pulling out some bass tear outs here, aren't we? I've got just available on Crime Scene Chemistry, which is just the best name for a record label I've ever heard. This is a track called Dark Side by my old buddy John Buccieri. Give it a listen.
Somewhere far away in space and time, staring upward at the gleaming stars in the obsidian sky, marooned on a small island in an endless sea, unable to escape. But tonight, on this small planet, who was here in the infinite void.
That is a sea of samples right there, bruv. A sea of samples.
It's dark, man. It's wicked, isn't it? Everything. I wanted to, you know, obviously there's a lot of speed garage around at the moment. I don't want to criticise anybody for jumping on the bandwagon, because it just is. It is what it is. But it was really nice, I felt, to be given the opportunity to pull something out by John. Because he's a guy that's been there doing the speed garage. I said it on my Trickstar show the other week. He's a speed garage OG. That guy has been there, like, doing it since day. So no bandwagon jumping here. This is authentic, and I think that comes across when you listen to the track. Every element, from the sound design of the bass patches, even the reverb settings, the time stretch, everything sounds so perfectly speed garage that if you want a blueprint for everybody to copy right now when they're making speed garage, go check this guy out and like check his back catalogue, because you know we're going back to Studio Beats days, and before that the guy's got an extensive list as long as both my arms of bangers. He was always my go-to guy during those bassline days. Do you know what I mean? When everything went really lengy and grimy, there was people like John that had been there for years already that kind of stayed true to what they were doing. And he was doing a kind of hybrid speed garage bassline thing back then, which really appealed to my palette. And that was what I modelled a lot of my kind of bassline productions. It was people like him and DJ Veteran, people like that, and Buddha, that were kind of really doing it for me. And it's been a long time since I picked up anything new by John. I had some contact with him probably last year or the year before, but like we used to speak regularly. I don't kind of catch up with him all that often these days. So it's just nice to kind of see his name pop up again, know that it's going to be sick, click on it and be blown away and go, yeah, this guy fucking gets it. So yeah, just I had to flag it. I felt it needed flagging.
Yeah, as soon as I heard that time stretch, that was the thing that just took me straight back to 95, I think. Like, it was so perfectly done how you do it in kind of the old school. But obviously it's engineered in a very modern, 21st century way. Big bass, and like you got that sound underneath you can hear was taken straight out of Professional Widow. He's got right at the bottom of the tune. Did you hear that or not?
Yeah. I know what you're saying. Yeah,
and
it's very subtle. It's very subtle, isn't it? But
I heard it straight away. I was like, "Ooh, Armand Van Helden, there he is." and then obviously he's used that same sample that Pendulum used for Slam. I wonder where that sample comes from. I don't know where he's found it, but he's obviously got more of it than what they used. But I was just instantly taken. I was like, I thought it was going to be drum and bass for a start because I just suddenly got that same sample that Pendulum's used. But yeah, I mean, look, it's a banger. I understand. Like, Speed Garage is not 100% like my bag. You know, it's obviously in the same genre. And poor old Davey Donkdown, aka Brock Runkle, massive big up your chest. He always sends me tunes, and I'm like, it's too Speed Garagey, like, because it doesn't fit in with the sound that I play. It doesn't mean I don't understand it as an art form, and this is done really, really well. Like, it's a big old tune. I'm sure it'll be rocking the walls of a Sheffield club at some time soon, if that's still a thing. But yeah, nice pick, man. It was a nice wild card to keep things savage at the end there. Yeah,
we had so much niceness already. We had to have something a little bit gritty, didn't we? But they say you're going to bless us with something as well.
Yeah, but it's weird it's weird to me you're into Speed Garage.
Before I listened to Garage at all, like, my brother used to be massively into happy hardcore. So my kind of early days listening to electronic and dance music was a lot of happy hardcore, and obviously jungle kind of went hand in hand with that. My brother kind of fell out of love with it all because he didn't really enjoy jungle, but I always liked those big sort of dutty warping bass lines and all the sub bass and the old, reggae samples and stuff. A lot of that translated really well into Speed Garage. So for me, it was like almost like a logical progression. And Armand Van Helden was definitely a massive, massive influence for me in the early days when I started producing. So I know what you're saying though. Like, if you weigh up jazz step against that stuff, it's a bit out there. But I mean, if you look at a lot of those early Robbie T productions, actually one of my tunes which has been selling the most recently, and I assume it's because Speed Garage is the buzzword and the new in thing that all the cool kids are getting back on board with. Loads of people have been buying Hard Love from me because it was a Speed Garage track that I did in, I want to say 2006, 2007, and obviously it went under the radar because, like, it was too early for bassline, too late for Speed Garage. It didn't really slot in anywhere particularly nice. But now a lot of people are obviously going, oh yeah, that I can play that.
Was that on a vinyl release? Was that on a Riddler?
Yeah. You're going to ask me which one?
No. I'm trying to remember if I've got it.
I want to say Riddler 9. Yeah, it was Riddler 9, I think, because it was on the flip of Mrs. Jones. It was on the flip of Mrs. Jones, which was quite an interesting release because it had Mrs. Jones on one side and then that on the other. They couldn't have been more different, really. But yeah, there you go.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for the Speed Garage. I say I've got memories of just because when I was at the end of school, as I was coming out of secondary school, it was all like Ministry of Sound. The annual would have been Tori Amos, Spin Sugar, Sugar Daddy O, all of them tunes, and then like 187 Lockdown Gunman. Like, it was just it was proper. As it was at its peak in its classic day.
That was a little golden age of Speed Garage.
Exactly.
That was. I loved all of
that. Just dating myself as being an old fuck. Anyway, so the next one, it's a remix of a Sam Binga and Redders tune. Sam Binga and Redders have been putting out some wicked tunes on their Bandcamp. I can't remember the name of the label they've got, but it's you can get it all over the place. Check out their stuff if you haven't. This is a remix of one of their things that they've put out. It's a track called Natural Mission. And Bakey is on the remix of this one.
I am the the thing to make the girl busy. Make the legs get busy. Set the trend like Drizzy. Hey, yo! Say man a crispy. 10 out of 10, who's counting? Your mama and your girl want mountain. So me give her the Evian, so me give her the fountain. She know I want leave, but she bouncing. That's a ticket I'm touting. When I'm in it, it's a loud thing. Just allow it, no point doubting. I got your ex-man frowning, probably drinking, drowning. Ain't my fault the man's down to the...
Your mama want mountain. He legitimately had that as a lyric in that tune. My days. What can I say about Bakey? I mean, he's on this group of artists that are doing this kind of LB vibe revival, you know, like loads of them go out on Time Is Now. I think he's been out on Time Is Now. And he's, you know, he does it really, really well, that sound of just the classic modern spin on the early noughties bass. He's just, I love a bit of Bakey, and I love his execution in this tune. I love Redders. You know, the stuff that Redders does with Sam Binga's wicked, and I think Bakey's complemented his vocal on this really, really well. I really enjoyed this one, and the bass is filth on it.
The bass is nasty, and I was loving that little the little brass stab in there that kind of breaks up the little bass. Now that's just a nice sort of little element in there that was giving me a smile. Yeah, nice selection, man. I know you're always talking about Bakey. You're always putting me onto Bakey tracks as well, aren't you? And it's nicely put together. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of that kind of sort of breakier, bass heavy stuff around, and a lot of it I know you've mentioned before on here, actually, like a lot of it being not particularly memorable, or you just kind of feel like it's a lot of it's just kind of rinse and LB. And I think that's fair to say, like with any kind of little niche subgenre, you're always going to kind of get the people that do it really well, and then maybe others that don't do it so well. But that definitely is one of the ones that's standing out to me that I've heard recently as one that has been done particularly well. Enjoyed it. So
yeah, I mean, John was...
And a nice flip from the... I was going to say a nice flip from all the beautiful stuff we were listening to a moment ago. We've gone properly dark.
Got to put a bit of filth on it for sure. You know, most subgenres they emerge from, like, you know, seminal track and or tracks, right? That, like, you know, grime pretty much got split out from Dizzy's "I Love You" and Eskimo, right? What Wiley did. This kind of new
Pulse X by Musical Mobs. Right?
Oh well, but that was a bit before it all started, right? But it was in there. It helped it, I guess.
I would always pinpoint that as the original one. Like if I had to pick out a track, that's always the one that stands out to me as the first one I heard. I went, fucking hell, that's a bit different. Do you know what I mean? It was properly out there.
It was definitely the first 8-bar tune. I would say I'd give you that. Yeah, but so you know, with this, I think the difference is it's like when you've got a subgenre that's spawned from a certain sound, the measure of how good you are as an artist for me is what your own spin is on it. If you're just doing exactly the same thing that the other guy's done but worse, or maybe to the same level, that's not interesting to me. You know, but if you put your own spin on it and done something interesting with it, that's when I get involved. And you know, I think the fact that you've got Redders' vocal in here, plus just the way that Bakey does things, it was just it's really good.
I think it's a fair point to make what you just said there, but I think from an artist's perspective, it's difficult, and especially with the music industry as it is. And I know we've touched on it before, how it's very different, obviously, to how it used to be. And I think because there's that much less money and traction is that much more difficult to gain, that typically what happens is, and we've seen it every year really since Garage's heyday, right? We just had like a little niche that will kind of rise to the surface, everybody jumps on the bandwagon, and then the next year it's something else, right? And within genres and within Garage, it's always been the same way. Like something will be the in sound and everyone kind of scrambles to kind of emulate it, and it's really difficult to, like as you said, like put your own spin on it. And that's kind of what sets apart the people that are really skilled and doing something really big from everybody else. You know what I mean? Generally the people that end up kind of making moves are the ones who kind of manage to kind of do their own thing at the same time. But it's kind of easier said than done. I think it would be flippant to just kind of go, you're just copying such and such, because it's striking that balance, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? I know I've been guilty of it in the past where I've kind of gone, rather than going, what do I want to make? I'll be going, what do people expect to hear from me? Or what do I need to make to be heard? And it took me a long while before I got pissed off with that and just went, fuck it, I'm just going to do my own thing, and did jazz step. But for years before that, I was just kind of flitting and emulating and doing little bits and pieces that didn't really have much to them. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's difficult to strike that balance as an artist. artists, and I'm rambling and I've gone off.
No, it's not. You're not rambling. Like everything you're saying is absolutely right. You know, I think as an artist, it's important to do what you love, but then I also feel like to get heard, sometimes you have to conform. You know, your first couple of tunes will slot into a genre so someone finds you, and then once you get a following, then you can start to go a bit more esoteric and do your own thing. Like it's true,
right? Or you can just skip. You know, as we've seen a few times over the years, you get the people who kind of get a bit of traction and then just completely do a U-turn and do something completely fucking different. And that's obviously where they were going from the start. And they've, you know, I don't want to criticize anyone for using anything as a stepping stone, but like they're a stepping stone. There are ways of doing it, and you know, people do what they do.
Like the way that Scream went from dubstep into what disco, I think he started doing. And
yeah, that was fucking mad. Fair play to him because he kind of pulled it off as well. I don't know how he made that transition.
Because he had the following and he was a huge name. If he just started in disco, do you reckon anyone would have given a fuck?
Yeah.
I think that's the point.
I really liked watching him do that and watching all that play out. That was a really interesting, like from the outsider's perspective, just watching it, going, how the fuck does he do it? I hope he did it. Good luck to him. And yeah, big up Scream because he's kind of back on the garage thing now, isn't he, as well? I know he's followed me the other day on Twitter, and I was like, wow.
Just wait for that treat. Wait for the tweet to come out. What's the biggest garage tunes right now? So we can go and rip all your bookings. Anyway. Should we take a?
There's a gassing topic. There's a gassing topic for a later.
How many times have I seen artists do that? Oh, I'm interested in subgenre X that I might not going to tell you that I want to get paid in. Please do my work for me and tell me what's popular. Let's stop being passive aggressive and let's go back in time. We love to.
No. You keep doing this.
What?
You keep skipping best of the rest to go back in time. You'll do best of the rest.
No, I love back in time. Yeah, you're absolutely right. We've got a shit ton of them to talk about as well. You know why it is? It's because in my playlist, the next one is your first pick, and thank you for calling me out. Let's go for it. So best of the rest. We're rounding out an additional 12 tunes this show, right? Please kick us off, Rob. What is your first pick?
I wish I knew what the correct pronunciation of this artist's name was. She reached out to me with a promo copy of this, and I think it might be Luri, LU.RE. I'm going to go with Luri. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I did email her actually before we kicked the show off just to double check that she hasn't seen it yet. The track's called Hold On. It's the debut single taken from a forthcoming EP, and it was the first I've heard of her, and it's just really slickly done. It's a really nice soulful production, vocal execution's really kind of ethereal. It just ticked a lot of boxes for me. I enjoyed it, and I think you might enjoy it too.
My first pick are a group that need no introduction. Disclosure are back with Ray on the vocals, and they've done this one Waterfall. You know, they don't need any extra promotion from me, but I absolutely love this tune. It's just really well done. Put it in your bag now.
Next up, I've got a track taken from Mobius's Memento LP, which is available on Crunk Culture, called Cabana. It's been around a little while now. It was one that I flagged when we were going to record this episode a few weeks back, so apologies for being late to the party on it. But it's nice, jazzy, so it's jazz fit basically, so why wouldn't I like it? And it's just really nicely done, and a lot of lovely musical elements, so go check it out if you haven't heard it already.
My next pick, I think, is on Wub Club. I'm going to say Wub Club. And
yeah, it is.
Amazing. And it is straight out of Eurasia, I'll say no more. An artist called Digital Koala that I've been following a lot, normally on the bass lane. This is a nice 2-step 4/4 EP. This pick from the EP is called Divine Modulation, and it is a lovely piece of 2-step.
Next on my list, I've got the D-Tune edit of a track called Coolia Can by Irish producer NK. It's available on Keychain Recordings. And don't be fooled by the fact he's Irish, because you would be forgiven for thinking this is from Central America. It sounds the part, and it makes me feel like I'm on holiday, and that's why I love it.
And never knew that was an Irish guy. You know, that tune, absolute vibes. Big style mariachi business. Wicked pick. My next pick is a bit cheese. That's all I can describe it as. It's by someone called Hexy or H.exe, I don't know. And the track is entitled Crush. It's just some warm, cheesy two-step vibes. Love it. Check it out.
Next up, I mean, I've had several releases since the last podcast, and of course they're all fantastic, so I'd recommend you go and scope them all out. But the pick of the bunch, purely on the basis that it's taken such a long time to come out and I was so excited for it, is my jazz step mix of I've Got a Crush on You by Jay Phelps and Mari Aurora. It's available now on Strictly Flavour, and put simply, this is exactly how I always wanted jazz step to sound.
That's got some proper like off tones on it. I love it. It's like that kind of almost like a 20s vibe on the vocal. It's wicked. Yeah. My next pick is some Lengtastic business. We're back on Night Bass, fresh one from Badger, and this is entitled Ew because it's stinky.
And big up Badger. I saw actually Spotify picked that as right at the top of their bass playlist, which is a good look. I think he was like cover material right there. Can't do bigger than that. Moving on. Next up, I have got a track called Low. It's taken from the Stepping Hill EP on Dance Regular. It's by an artist called I think I'm saying this right, Sajna. And Roscoe G. It's more soulful, jazzy, brass-laden vibes, and it's just right up my street. I love it. Highly recommend it.
So here it is. We mentioned it earlier in the show. Clarcq, Do It To Me. It's been my favourite Clarcq tune since the last show. What a banger. Just get this one in your bag immediately. Two-step sickness.
Next up, available on Garage Shed now, is a track called Drama at Your Place from Ollie Weeks and Utelka. Every time I listen to this, I love it just a little bit more. It's just a really slick, well put together track with a really catchy vocal. I challenge anyone not to just fall in love with it.
Lose sight of everything. My baby, he'll stay home tonight.
Returning to Garage Shed, this one's on the GS Dubs imprint. Subtemplar Lock and Load. I hope you check this one out, Rob. There's some proper off-kilter new school brass going on this thing. A mixture of kind of bass and jazz. Jazz and bass, is that a new genre? I don't know. I'm loving this one.
Yeah, big up Subtemplar on that one. Next on my list, I have got In Time, which is the new single on Upcycle Recordings from Laura Alice. More feel-good, bumpy 4/4 vibes. I think this is her strongest offering yet, and I'm loving it.
Large up Laura. My next pick was, as always, we talk about this guy all the time. It was Producer of the Year 2021 for ITG. It's these fresh ones. This one's entitled Lose My Mind. It's got a good kind of mix of soulfulness going into the sick savageness. Love it. He just does it well every time.
Next up, I've got a track called Precious Thing. It's taken from the Late Night Jams EP on Discos Marcianos. I hope I've said that right. And I have no idea how you say this artist's name, so I'm just going to wing it and say Guim, Guim, if you need to search that. But it's just a lovely, soulful, steppy vibe. Just kind of makes me feel warm. I've got all the time in the world for tracks that make me feel warm.
Almost sounds dirty. Oi, love, I can see you, Gwyn. Next one. So he's back. He puts out quality, not quantity. Sammy Vergie's dropped the Bloom EP, and this one is entitled No Other. And he's got the Ragga Twins on this track. That's almost like a marker along a career journey within Garage to get Ragga Twins involved. This one is pretty sick. Whole EP's nice. Check it out.
Yo, ready for the bacchanal. Virgie, I come with one here, that is chemical. We would laugh and joke, but do what you
Niceness. Next up, I've got another one from Upcycle Recordings, who are smashing it at the moment. This one's by Eddie Craig and Liam Craig. No idea whether they're related, before you ask. But the track itself, Flowers on the Curtains, is absolutely wicked. It's a real nice, soulful jam, really catchy vocal, really infectious. Just doing it on a whole number of levels, and I would strongly urge anyone who hasn't yet heard it to go scope it out.
100 reasons I don't wanna know, but I've been feeling crazy late, wasting away.
Jumping over to Point Blank Recordings, we've got some Filipino vibes. Remixing Code Blue. The track's called Last in Love, and it's Kathy Hobby's Everlasting Love vocal mix. It's a blatant Todd rip, but it's done so well. It's like as if Todd did a tune at his highest peak, coming out right now from this artist, Kathy Hobby. Please check it out. I really enjoyed it.
And just on that note of discussing Kathy Hobby, I actually had one of hers shortlisted. It didn't quite make my cut, but I would have said exactly the same thing about that. So she's really consistency, the word there with Kathy, I think. Anyway, moving on to the next one. My next choice is Let Somebody Go by ITG award-winning Changing Phases. They were our breakout artist of the year last year, and it's available now on Soul City Digital, and it's just so happy. It's so happy, but like they have this knack for making these really cheerful tracks without them being cheesy and irritating, and I think that's like a real skill, and there's like a real fine line to tread. Changing Phases routinely do it. This is a perfect example, so go check it out and smile.
Let somebody go.
We're going wonky on this one. This is definitely a bit more on the modern edge of garage music. Jasper Tigner has done a tune called Blush, and it is just modern wonky goodness. Pure outro vibes for me. I played it at the end of one of my shows recently and absolutely love this one. Check it out.
I'm so glad you mentioned that one, man. I had that written down. It's a vibe. Next up, I've got one. I've been a bit cheeky. This one actually isn't out until next week, so depending on when you're listening or watching the podcast, this may or not be available, but definitely go check it out either way. You can pre-order it if it's not yet available. It's a new one from About 2, and it's called Sublime, available from the 22nd of April on Strictly Flavour. It's more jazz-type goodness, and it's just really slickly done. So big up Maxine Sinclair, because it's just fucking great. I have nothing else to say than it's just great. Go listen to it if you haven't heard it yet.
This guy's work rate. How many tunes has he put out since the last show? We've had Para. He's back. He's done Untitled 1. This is Entitled 2. A lot of his tunes I feel have had like a kind of Dem 2 flair to them recently, but just I don't know how he keeps getting better. Big up Para. Just love this one. Love it.
And from one prolific guy who's churning them out to another, I legitimately had difficulty. Like I couldn't remember which Dan T track it was I wanted to name, so I put Dan T Beatport in, went on his artist page, and yeah, he's had about 12 releases since the last episode. This was the pick of the bunch, but I could have named any one of them. The guy's on fire. He's really consistent. This is a great example of it. Nice garage house vibe. Really smooth, really soulful, really catchy. Go check it out. It's available now on Captain Records. It's called Inside.
Big up Dan T. My last one is a cheeky little bootleg. It's remixing Ariana Grande tune, so you're going to be thinking, what the fuck? So she's done the tune 34 plus 35, and on the bootleg here we've got DJ CDQ. He has done an awesome job, and just check out his SoundCloud because he's been putting out some wicked freebies over the past couple of months. Big up CDQ for this one. A fun fact, I thought this tune was called 3345 just because that's what I see when I see these sorts of things. Large up.
Do you know what you say that about Ariana Grande and that I would be thinking what the fuck, but actually I don't think that at all. I really rate Ariana Grande. I think she's got a really wicked voice and she's very versatile, and in terms of her tracks and what she actually records, they've all got the potential to cross over to making good garage mixes with the right person doing them, for sure. So
it's so surprising given how manufactured she is, right? She's like a Disney product. And yet, you still listen to the tunes, and it's like, okay, how can I not enjoy this? Like, let's not become Grandad Melts on this podcast, but it does. It's crazy. It's always fun because I'll find one of her tunes. Like when I found this tune, I'll go on YouTube, like because I've never heard the original before, and then I'll look and I'll be like, oh, I'm just hearing this tune on this bootleg, and it's had 800 million views. Like that's when I know I'm old and out of touch.
yeah, for real. Do you know what I said? I said a similar thing to the wife yesterday about Doja Cat as well. I said specifically about Say So. I think I tweeted. I don't know if you saw it. I think it's just one of the finest pop tracks that's been released in recent memory. No matter how many times I hear it, I always smile, and I never like it any less. Do you know what I mean? It's manufactured to the bone, but it's there's a core of some really decent pop music coming out of America at the moment. Maybe that does make me sound old. I don't know. I maybe think it's just hot enough. I don't know. Whilst we just before we skip out of the best of the rest, I did have a note here just to apologise to BWK Project for not mentioning Pressure, his single that he released on the last episode, because I did actually have it shortlisted. And I think we had a bit of a mix-up, like we were jostling things around, weren't we, like with our selections, and I just literally missed it off the piece of paper, but absolutely it deserved a shout. And it's only been a couple of months. I know in the world of garage, 2 months is a long time, and a million singles have come out since, but and I'm sure everyone's heard it by now, but if you haven't, do go check out Pressure by BWK, because I think it's one of his strongest offerings in recent memory, and that's saying something because the guys. You got
BWK with all of these tunes. If you want to check them out on our Spotify playlist, once again, please head over to intheukgarage.com/recommends and just hit a quick follow on that. Big up Mr. Phonetix for curating that one.
I'd better go and update that. You're advertising it and I'm just sitting here thinking, shit, I haven't done that yet.
There's time. We'll fix it in post. That's what we always say. Anyway, can we time travel now? I know I was obviously a bit premature before. Are we allowed to time travel now?
We can time travel now, mate. Yeah, now we've done best of the rest. Let's do it. Me first?
Yeah, just as a reminder to any new listeners, it's not a reminder if you're a new listener, we like to explore what is lovingly known as the forgotten years of garage, kind of dark ages between around 2003 to 2010, of just music that's kind of was there and doing things and was overseen, oversighted at the time.
Oh, yeah, and forgotten and now lost in the ether because it was all vinyl only and there aren't even digital copies of most of this shit. Do you know what I'm going to build a website for the lost years. I've been thinking about it recently. I'm going to knock up a little website and I'm going to have clips of loads of these classic tracks on there because it's just too good to just be, gone. It makes me sad. And this is a prime example of one, that I feel didn't, deserves more love. We've actually talked. You said when I flagged it with you, you said, we already talked about the EP, didn't we? Because it was a joint venture between Stereo Hype Recordings and True Tiger. Stereo Hype being run by Charmer and Misty Dubs. True Tiger was obviously Scandalous Unlimited's outlet. And on one side you had 2 tracks from this man who we're going to discuss today, Will Phillips. The other side, you had the One Dark Martian tracks. Now, we talked about, I think we flagged It Doesn't Have to Be, didn't we, on a previous episode? A sort of seminal One Dark Martian track, which really stands out. This would be this one I'm talking about today is called In Love With You. It would be Will's equivalent, I feel. It really stands out in memory for me as his strongest one.
Wicked things, man.
Oh man, do you know what? We should talk, but when it gets to like the little breakdown where he's got that little Rhodes solo, can we just like pipe it back up again? Because I feel that needs more love. I remember talking to Will at the time about how he got the keys to sound so legitimate, because if you played me that track 1,000 times, I would swear that he's playing on a Rhodes Mark II because they sound so authentic. But it's not. Like, every sound in there is just straight out of Logic, and he's just obviously processed and programmed everything to minute detail to sound absolutely spot on. The bass line, even the bass line, man, if you told me someone had played that in with a live bass guitar, I would assume that was true. But again, that's just pulled straight out of, I think it was like the ES6 or whatever it is in Logic. It's been a while since I used Logic, so forgive me if I'm name plugging the wrong plug in there. But yeah, Will Phillips, man, what a talent. He was the talent, you know. I should probably sort of pipe that in with the fact that the artist formerly known as Will Phillips, who obviously is Grammy Award-winning tourist these days, working on that Sam Smith album, and he's gone on to do bigger and better things. But there was a while there where he was kind of doing these bumpy 4/4 MJ Cole meets Artifact kind of tracks. Do you know what I mean? That was that. If I had to describe that, I'm just going to shut up actually because I can hear the piano coming in the background. This is my favourite bit of the track. It's insane to think how good he was for his age. Was he like 20 at this time? I remember meeting Will, and he was like young. I think he might have been younger than that when he recorded this. Like, there was just always that raw, natural ability there to come up with something like that. It's just very cleverly done to take like a little vocal hook, build a whole track around it, and have those kind of MJ Cole style piano elements. You know what I mean? There's obviously, like, he was like the MJ Cole protege, wasn't he? Do you know what I mean? He was MJ Cole kind of Mark II around that time, and he really kind of nailed those pianos. But then I liked it because he kind of started off with, obviously he had those early prolific dubs releases. He did that Scooby, it was a 10-inch press, wasn't it? And it was Scooby with Shaggy on the other side. And I fucking loved that. I thought that was wicked. It was a bit more raw and gritty than that track we just listened to there. But he kind of progressed onto there. He did a few two-step bits, which were kind of very MJ Cole sounding. And then he kind of went off and he went, right, like, what's doing the business at the moment? Like, what's everyone in Uptown getting hyped about? And like, Artifact was the guy, like, for a while there, we were all just like, fucking hell, From Russia with Dubs, yeah, the new one's coming out and all that. And Will somehow managed to kind of take elements of that and fuse it with MJ. That's always how I looked at it. It was like Artifact fused with MJ, kind of met somewhere in the middle, and that was Will Phillips. And I think a lot of people kind of wrote him off as a bit of a one-trick pony because they were just like, oh, it just seems like he's trying to mug MJ Cole off. But I never kind of felt that with Will. I always felt like there were elements. There was obviously a strong inspiration and influence from MJ, but I always felt he kind of did it with his own sort of take, and he was quite creative with it. I would hazard a guess that perhaps towards the end there he got a bit bored with it, and maybe that's why he moved on to sort of different greener pastures. I don't know. I'm just speculating there. I haven't spoken to Will for a long time, but I enjoyed all his releases. There was this. There was a number of them on this bumpy 4/4 tip. There was In Love With You. I'm trying to think what the other track on that EP was called. Ignoring Me?
Or was it Being in Love?
Be in Love. I think Being in Love was on one of the Streets releases. There was a few, because he did some on Stereohype, and then some of them were like little, almost like extras on the Streets releases, which were typically for kind of more in-your-face bootleggy type ones. But I think I assume perhaps there was kind of illicit samples from vocals from R&B tracks or something. That's why they ended up on there. They were wicked nonetheless. And there was a while there where I remember Red Selector coded a digital store, didn't he, for Stereohype, and you could get all of that stuff. And I was fortunate enough that I jumped at the opportunity and I got all of those tunes, because if you didn't, then they're just gone now, aren't they? And good luck getting hold of a vinyl. I'm sure there probably are some on sale on Discogs, but I wouldn't like to hazard a guess how much they're going for. Probably not as much as they should be when you consider there's probably only a few hundred of them in circulation tops. But yeah, props to Will. We've obviously, this is the 13th episode, so we've been doing this podcast over a year now. This is the first time we've mentioned Will Phillips, and there was a while there was a few artists that came out of the lost years that if you had said to me, like, who's gonna transcend garage, who's gonna end up doing really big things, Will Phillips would have been top of the list for sure. I definitely would have picked Will Phillips, Scott Diaz, and Artifact. And obviously all three of them have gone on to do bigger and better things. Yeah, I'm gushing. I feel like I'm gushing here, but I was just always such a massive fan of Will's sound, and I just loved how he kind of blended it, and it was always very clinical and clean, but it was that way because he wanted it to be that way. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you get those people
completely.
who kind of talk and go, "Oh no, like I wish it was a bit rougher," and it's like, well, he didn't want it to be rougher. He wanted it to be like, if Will Phillips makes something and it sounds like that, it's because he fucking wants it to be that way, and I always enjoyed it, man. I like there's a little part of me that can appreciate the kind of gritty stuff. I look back to the turn of the century, and like, I love those Harry Lime recordings, and they were raw as fuck. Do you know what I mean? But equally, like, I can really appreciate, like, when I've got my nerdy producer hat on, the ability to get something that clean and straight out of the box as well. Because like every sound on that track is just straight out of Logic, and to be able to do it that well and create that level of emotion as well, because it's a really emotive track. Don't know, it makes me sound like a bit of a pansy, but I've definitely sat there and cried listening to that track before. It just invokes that much emotion from me. Like, there's not many people that can do that, man. Like, Will was one of them. Mondo Grosso can do it. MJ can do it with certain tracks as well. In Garage, I don't know if I could name any other tracks that have brought me to tears, by any other artists. So that's probably deserving of a nod in itself, I think.
Yeah, completely. I mean, it's like saying he's a bit of a rip of MJ Cole. Such a weird thing to say, considering he was MJ Cole's protege. So, like, surely MJ's going to be saying, okay, this is how I do it, and here's all the bits. And then he's going to learn exactly the same kind of methods. And then he'd end up with similar sounds. Like, it makes complete sense to me that it would come out sounding slightly like him in the first instance. And like you said, his first release, his Prolific Dubs one, I mean, he was so young when that went out. And and he was straight away was out on MJ Cole's label, and it was raw. They were raw tunes, and then, like you say, he progressed into being like a lot more musical and emotive, and you could tell that it wasn't. There was a slight bit of polish where it wasn't complete MJ Cole, but if someone told you it was MJ Cole, you'd be like, oh yeah, I completely believe you. But like he's obviously a massive talent, and he's gone on to do his things. It was a bit weird. It's like, it felt like to me, like he knew he was talented. Like, he knew he had talent, right? And I remember the story that this came out, this EP came out with One Dark Martian, and then he turned around and said, oh, well, I've released an EP in Garage now, so I've had enough. I remember hearing that story somewhere. And it was like, it sounded like there was a lot of ego there. And it's almost like, okay, he's got so much talent. Is it warranted for him to have that ego? Maybe it is. Maybe he's allowed to be that big-headed. But I feel like if you've got to be grounded to get places. And I feel like if he was a little bit more grounded, he might have been even more successful than he is now. The thing is, when you, like, I hear Tourist tunes on the radio, and they'll be like, this is the new one from Tourist, and it'll be tune of the week, and they'll be going mad for it. Like, he's absolutely smashing it, and best of luck to him. I hope he's managed to stay grounded, especially seeing as he's got a Grammy under his belt now as well, as you said. I hope he's managed to keep his feet on the ground. Do you know what? I mean, in this part of his career,
I knew Will around that time, and I mean, I don't know. This is the thing with stories and hearsay and conjecture, is you're always listening to something secondhand. I never got really like a massive. I never really sniffed out much ego from him. And generally speaking, like, if I do pick up on any ego in music circles, I distance myself from people because I just ain't got time for it. I always found Will quite down to earth. I don't know, like, if there's truth in what you said there or not. I wouldn't like to speculate. Do you know what I mean? But ultimately, at the end of the day, like, I think you hit the nail on the head there, where you said, really, if anybody would be excused to have ego, it would be somebody that was, talked about as the next MJ Cole at the age of sort of 17. And actually, yeah, I totally agree with you as well. Like, for somebody to turn around and say he sounds like an MJ Cole rip, that's a pretty big compliment. Do you know what I mean? It probably wasn't intended. Knowing what Uptown was like and knowing how fucking nerdy and argumentative everyone got on there, it was probably meant as a diss. But actually, I think if somebody referred to me as the second coming of MJ Cole, I think I'd feel like I'd accomplished all my life goals. Especially, you know, someone as young as Will who's obviously looking up to someone like Matt. And yeah, absolutely, it would make sense that he would go on to kind of make tunes that sounded somewhat similar, but you know, again, I could always differentiate them, and I always liked what he did. That's why.
There was another guy that came close. I think there was another guy that came close. His name was Soulmaster. He sounded a lot like MJ Cole.
Forgot about him. Yeah.
You forgot about him. I see one of the tunes pop up in my library when I was looking for this one.
Oh, nice.
Ride On. What a tune. Ride On.
Oh man, that got some airplay, didn't it, man? That was on
the
Radio
Hairy Cuts.
That was on Radio 1 at the time, man. The Wide Boys and Raz Kwame were repping that tune on Radio 1. That's mental. And to think like there's a whole story of why that EP completely bombed, but in essence, in retrospect, like had we not had the pressing issues that we had with it, Hairy Cuts Volume 1 should have sold by the bucket load because it got repped on Radio 1, Kiss, 1Extra. It was just fucking everywhere there for a while, alas.
And
we went into a Grammy and I'm still sat here flogging a dead horse.
Well, you know, if you haven't worked out, Soulmaster is one of Rob's many aliases from way back when. Should we dive into my pick? This is a rare one. The original pick that I wanted to go with was a vinyl release, and I literally, honestly, could not find any recording of it anywhere on the internet. So I've had to leave that for another day until I rip the vinyl, whenever it might be. But it was a Jack in House one on Padded Cell, and we've got there's a whole discussion to be had there about the branch off of Jack in House during the Lost Years. You know, that was pretty much where it was founded, right? We can come back to that another week. This tune that I've ended up picking now is by an artist called Sly, which is a alias of Jeremy Sylvester. It's featuring the vocals of Tony Lindsay. It came out in 2009, and this one is called Get Down.
You got to get down on your knees. Free your soul. You got to get down on your knees. Free your soul. You got to get down on your knees. Free your soul. You got to get down on your knees. You got to get down, 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 get down. You got to get down, get down, get down, get down.
Energy, mate. Energy. Like, I wanted to pick this tune, first of all, because I absolutely love it. I've caned it into the ground over the years. It's important to point out how involved Jeremy Sylvester's obviously been, like, forever in garage. Like, all throughout the Lost Years, he was consistent, right? And especially in the early parts of the Lost Years, where he was putting the Club Asylum stuff out, which was wonky 4/4, that was fitting in with that kind of the main garage kind of push at that time. You know, so that, like, he's consistently been releasing tunes up until today. Like, I still get Jeremy Sylvester promos to this day. This tune, it was a bit of a rip of the old Tough Jam dub of Testify. Do you remember that tune? Is it Jay Williams or someone like that? So I used to play them two tunes together because they kind of sounded similar, so they complement each other. But yeah, it's like he's got about as many aliases as you, this man, and he can still do it. Like this tune, this will blow up any rave to this day still. Like
100%.
Like, that's 13 years old, bro.
Energy, you like hit the nail on the head with one word there. Energy. Like when that drops, like I challenge anyone to not just bust a skank. Like it's impossible not to. I literally don't have the words to encapsulate how much respect I have for Jeremy Sylvester and his back catalogue. It's just phenomenal. And like you hit the nail on the head when you're saying about consistency and how he's consistently delivered and been involved in Garage like in its whole fucking entirety. Do you know what I mean? The whole time it's been there, Jeremy Sylvester has always been there, and he was always really like during those lost years as well, man. He was kind of quite forward thinking because Jeremy was on the digital thing before people even really appreciated that digital was a thing. Do you know what I mean? I remember being at uni. And I think it was before I was even on fucking Uptown. It must have been like 2002, 2003. And one of those Club Asylum tunes that ended up on the 2005 album sampler, he had that for free download on mp3.com going that far back. So he obviously saw the promise in the digital age. And when everybody else was running around trying to flog vinyl still, Jeremy had urbandubs.com set up and he was flogging us all CDs, and we were all there flocking there by the masses and paying a tenner a CD. And I wouldn't like to even try and hazard a guess how much money he made from that, but I would imagine he did very well. He had the business savvy, and fair play to him, good luck, because he deserved to do well from it, especially with the quality and consistency of the tunes. Everything he put out around that time, I was just like, mate, take my money, I'll have a CD please. I don't even know if I still got them, they're probably in the loft now. I kind of ripped all my CDs and put most of them in the loft, you know what I mean? But there was some real strong ones, and I think he did a remixes one as well, didn't he? Where like obviously X amount of years had passed since the official releases. Jeremy being Jeremy, notoriously cheap with like bootlegging things and sample packs and stuff, and you could buy a CD and it had like Tell Me It's Real, Imagine, it had the Genuine remix, all of those were on a CD. I had that one as well. Interesting that you picked this one, because I think if I was going to pick a Jeremy Sylvester track from the lost years, this probably wouldn't have been my pick. But if I'm honest, I'd kind of forgotten about it until you mentioned it, and I'd forgotten how good it was until I listened back to it. And I'd say that for a few of Jeremy's tracks, you kind of forget how good they are until you listen back to them and you go, fucking hell, this guy really gets it. And he's always just kind of had this knack for taking things and just building these really energetic tracks that make you smile. Do you know what I mean? Like you were beaming as soon as that track dropped. So was I.
Every time, mate.
So many of those Club Asylum tunes, man, as well. Like I just got so many fond memories attached to them and those prolific Herbal Club nights and stuff.
So
around that
what
time.
one would you pick? Let me guess. It's going to be Hypnotise, right? It's got to be Hypnotise. No?
It probably would be Hypnotise. You know, the other one I really loved, which people always frown at me and they go like, that's one of your standouts, like, because it's a really obscure one to pick. But I think actually if you listen to my tunes and like the stuff that I kind of tend to go for, it kind of makes sense. I really liked the Legendary dub, which I think started originally, it was a John Legend boot, and then he released an instrumental version of it. I think it was on the 2006. I think it was the first track on the 2006 album sample, if I recall right. And it wasn't like typically Jeremy Sylvester or Club Asylum. You wouldn't necessarily hear it and go, that's Club Asylum, but it was just fucking wicked. In fact, do you know what? I'm gonna in post, I'm gonna play that track whilst we're talking about it, because it's just such a nice vibe. And I always used to, around that time, I'd always start sets with it because it was just a really nice warm opener. It had this really low rumbly bass on it that would just sound really good, and then it dropped into these really funky keys. You're frowning at me like I feel like you probably probably got it on the tip of your tongue, but can't remember the one I'm talking about. Mate,
it's not even in my head, mate. It's I'm excited to hear back the show to hear what it sounds like. Yeah. What I'm thinking about is like all of these tunes you can get off of him now. He does like a USB with 400 tunes on that you can buy off him with like his whole back catalogue pretty much, just for like one price.
How much is one of those? Oh shit! Pull my headphones out. That's not good. How much does one of those USBs go for? Do you know? I can't say I've looked through. I haven't looked at it because I've got a load of the CDs. Do you know what I mean? So I wouldn't re-buy them necessarily, but I'm interested to know.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw it as I was like kind of looking around on this tune. I saw it like one of the Google results was 400 Jeremy Sylvester tracks. So there's the
there's that many tracks. is insane, isn't it? Like to even have that many to be able
his
to
work
offer
rate's
them,
ridiculous.
Fair play to him.
So there's 50 quid on his Bandcamp for the USB, and then he's got the digital download version for 35 quid. But that's 400 tunes from one of the best producers, one of the best garage producers of all time.
I'd imagine he probably sells quite a few of them. I don't know if he's quite knocking on Kanye territory with his like an MP3 device that we talked about last time. I would say Jeremy is potentially more deserving of those sales than Kanye, but that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, man, like I tell you what's interesting with Jeremy as well is like when he does these releases, there's definitely like a formula. You can generally speaking, you can recognise a Jeremy Sylvester tune or a Club Asylum tune or a God tune, depending on which of his alias he's using, right? They're kind of formulaic in a sense, but equally, like there are other producers I would say are formulaic, and it pisses me off because all of their tunes sound the same. But I wouldn't say that about Jeremy. I would say they're formulaic, and I can go, yeah, that's Jeremy Sylvester. But he always manages to have a little something in there that sparks my interest, and he always has done, and I would hazard a guess probably always will do. And he's a top geezer as well, so I've got all the time in the world for people who are that skilled and humble with it. Top man.
One of the greatest garage producers of all time, mate.
For sure.
Hands down.
Sure. I feel like he's probably if you sat there and made a list, or if you asked 50 hardcore garage heads in a room who their favourite garage producer is, I would say probably MJ Cole would crop up more than any other, right? I would say you'd probably have a number of people saying LB. You would probably have a lot of people saying Steve Gurley. I think Jeremy Sylvester probably deserves more of those people going, oh, Jeremy Sylvester. Like I look at those lost years and I go, right, who were two of the really consistent, big name acts who had been around for years? The two that spring to mind, and we talked about the Y Boys in a previous episode, the Y Boys and Jeremy Sylvester. Those are two names that should come up more when you're talking to people about who their favourite garage producer is, I feel, in my humble opinion, because I feel like both those acts have just been prolific. Like ridiculous. Not even prolific doesn't even encapsulate. It doesn't verbalise how efficient and their work rate just fucking ridiculous. Yeah, like you said, to be able to offer 400 tunes on a USB stick is just crazy. It's just crazy. Like,
yeah, but it's smart though, right? Because otherwise you're just going to be sitting there and not doing anything with it.
Absolutely.
So it's might as well be like get the lot. No, I didn't think he was, mate.
Tracks to offer is kind of mind blowing, isn't it?
I think a lot of people would be so protective over their music they wouldn't want to do it. And he's like you said, he's forward thinking, right? So
yeah.
Anyway, that was my pick. Thank you for talking about that with me. I think it was good stuff. So for gassing this week, Rob, this month, shall we say? You picked an interesting topic that we've argued over before.
This is one that comes up frequently in conversation, isn't it? And I've every time we've kind of talked about it, I've gone, we should talk about that with gassing. Obviously, we've always been somewhat reticent to do it because it's very easy to get fucking really nerdy and technical with it. And funnily enough, I saw Duncan recently, and I started having a little rant about this. And I think there was probably a moment there where we went all glassy-eyed and was thinking, oh, we should shut the fuck up. I feel so strongly about it. It's definitely worth a quick discussion, I feel. Mastering and the loudness war. And so I have a real bee in my bonnet about it. So in essence, right, like you take those tracks, you take some classic Beatles recordings, or even you go back earlier than that. Obviously, they were all mastered for their appropriate medium, which around that time was vinyl, and they were mastered in a certain way. The mastering process as a whole, and I think the very essence of mastering goes over a lot of people's heads, because the way people look at it these days as how loud can I make my track, and that isn't what it's necessarily about, right? It's about putting the final sparkle or magic on a recording and making it sound a certain way so that it transfers across different sound systems and sounds good. Because you can make, like if you make a track straight out of your studio and then take it in your car, 9 times out of 10, unless you've made some little edits afterwards, it's going to sound a bit shit. Do you know what I mean? Because all speakers, all setups are EQ'd slightly differently. They will have different nuances to them. So it's a real art. The mastering engineer and I feel it's like a kind of a lost art these days, because obviously there's fewer mastering engineers around than there once were, as there are, there's just less money in music, so it was always going to go that way. So if you come across a good mastering engineer and you've got a good relationship with them, make sure you fucking take care of them and nurture that relationship. I feel in recent years, and I say in recent years, I mean, it's been going on a long time, gradually since back in the day, it sounds really cliche saying back in the day, but in yesteryear, right, like the recordings were a certain volume, and they've just got louder and louder and louder, and it was going on, and it was gradually increasing in volume, right, until probably like when we had the whole digital revolution. So when it became possible to make music on a computer, when just for the sake of argument, let's say when Cubase introduced the first VST, and all of a sudden everyone went, shit the bed, I don't need hardware anymore, I can make an entire tune out of my computer. The art of engineering something properly was lost overnight. Like a lot of those engineers who were making their living engineering tunes for people, making sure that things were done properly, were mixed down properly, that went. And there was a large expanse of time there where the quality of music was definitely affected. I don't care what anyone said. There were people that will argue this. There was a point in time where there was a lot of shit music around because there was a lot of people that were kind of learning on the go, and it's not a criticism of those people. Fair play to them. They were there already. They were trying to get on with it. There was some good music as well, don't get me wrong. I'm not slating all of it, but there was a lot of shit out there. And off the back of that, like, came this thing where, like, it's almost like the mastering process, the point of it and the principles of it, I think for a lot of people got lost. You had people, and I don't want to insult Skrillex, right? But Skrillex is a great. In fact, I'm going to compliment Skrillex here because I feel like what Skrillex achieved in his kind of his revolution, his take on dubstep. You know, when he kind of took that kind of nice, warm, wobbly dubstep sound, and he made it really fucking gritty and in your face and all out tech, right? Skrillex was somebody who came along and was really using limiting heavily in the mixdown stage of his tracks, because he wanted every element to smack you in the fucking face. It was an artistic decision, right? And the way he did it was fucking genius. And like, it was almost revolutionary in the way he was doing it. I'm sure there were other artists doing it around that time as well, but like Skrillex is the standout one for me because, you know, he kind of achieved. It was the pinnacle of dubstep and tech around that time, right? He kind of shot to fame, and he's made a really decent career off the back of it. But in doing so, what he did, like he took that and he did that artistically. And if you look at one of Skrillex's tracks in your audio editor, it's like a brick wall. It's just a fucking light, it's just a big brick, because everything in there is so loud. And unfortunately, the byproduct of that is that for some reason, everybody else went, I've got to fucking do the same. And all of a sudden, everyone was using a sausage fattener or a Waves L2 Ultra Maximizer on every channel of their mix. And you ended up with these tracks that, and I've touched on it, I'm sure I've touched on it before in previous episodes, haven't I? Like, we probably glossed over it, but like, there are tracks, even tracks that we've discussed in recent times. I'm not going to go naming names because I don't want to be a cunt or come across unprofessional, but there are definitely tunes that we've talked about that I feel personally, and obviously this is subjective, my personal opinion is that had those tracks been mixed down by somebody else, limited to a lesser extent, not over mastered to the degree they have been, they would have sounded a lot warmer, and for me, from my perspective, would have stood the test of time better. Alas, we will see going down the line whether those tracks do last the test of time. I may stand corrected, it remains to be seen. But it's an interesting one because obviously basic human physiology, like the way that you perceive sound and music particularly, is that the louder something is, the better it sounds. And that's why when you go to a concert or a club night, everything's piped out really fucking loud. Because let's be honest, right? You take a track, you play it on your iPhone, everything sounds dog shit, right? You take one of those tunes, you play it in a club, and some of those tunes are going to sound fucking banging, especially when you've got an appreciation for the bass coming out of those big speakers. So it's basically like the whole mastering and loudness war kind of stems from that, doesn't it? You know, it's that whole loud is better. And it's kind of a common dogma. It's like a misrepresentation of how things actually are, because you in looking at it in those simplistic terms, you overlook all of the negatives to it. And the negatives are that once you start really hard limiting something and over compressing things, you add little digital artifacts, especially, you know, we're all using digital equipment and software these days. You're adding in little digital artifacts, you're reducing your signal to noise ratio, you're doing things that are almost to the detriment of your recording, and as I say, I feel like it's kind of spoiling a lot of music, and has done for several years now. Like when I look back even to like when we're talking about the lost years and how I used to kind of mix things down, and I use the term mastering loosely because like I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was kind of cobbling it together. Like back then I was being quite being gentle, like when I was limiting things, and now I'm getting sent demos through, or I get sent promos come through, and they're like mastered to. I don't want to get too into the technical side of things. If we start talking about -6 LUFS and that, like people, like there's obviously a certain crowd that will know what I'm going on about, and a lot of other people are going, "This geezer's a fucking nerd," and you're right, I am. But that's besides the point. But I'm hearing stuff now that's just limited to such an extent that I can't. I did have one track came through to me recently, and it was fucking brilliant. But I can tell you now, I didn't play it, and I binned it off because it'd been mastered to the point where like all the bass was breaking up, and I could hear distortion in there even when I was listening to it quite quietly. And I was thinking to myself, fucking hell, if I played that in the club, that would sound shit. Because you take a recording, you amplify it by however many decibels, you're amplifying all of that noise and all of those digital artifacts. And the crazy thing to me is that now we're in this digital streaming revolution. We're in the age of streaming, right? Where like we talked about statistics. Say we say 95% for argument's sake of music is streamed, and the vast majority of that probably being via Spotify and Apple Music, right? All of the mastering services, all of those pieces of software, and I know that you obviously have a tremendous respect for those people that are coding those bits of software, they have an algorithm built into them so that the volumes level out, and you can actually switch that on and off in Spotify. I don't use Deezer, so I don't know if you can do it in Deezer. I assume you probably can. There's probably an option in Spotify. If you go into your settings, you can actually turn that on and off. Most people probably don't. Most people probably don't care enough. I'm fully aware that I'm a complete nerd, so this matters to me more than it would your average person. But they have an algorithm built into them which adjusts the volume of these recordings accordingly, and Spotify's one is essentially, for argument's sake, about -14 LUFS. So if you've got a track that gets mastered to -8 LUFS, all that's going to happen when you then upload that via a distributor and it goes to Spotify is, in essence, the algorithm in Spotify turns it down by 6 decibels, halves the volume of it. So human perception of sound and audio levels, 6 decibels equates to a halving of volume if you're reducing it by that, or if you were to boost something by 6 decibels, you'd be amplifying it twofold, right? So you're mastering your tracks to this really loud level. And it's kind of pointless because Spotify just then turns it down. So actually, when you're really getting into this loudness war and you're going, fucking hell, I've got to make my track really loud, you're limiting, you're compressing, you're overdoing it, you're introducing those little digital artifacts that I talked about, and you're doing them for no reason because then Spotify turns it straight back down again. So there's definitely an argument to be had for going, don't fucking overdo it on the mastering. Now the problem is, like, because me and you obviously have briefly touched on this before we went on air, and I know we talked about it at length in the past. You're kind of in this position now where a lot of people are kind of, I don't want to say stuck, or it's all they've ever known, like especially with some of the newer producers. Obviously they're not going to have ever produced tracks that are that lower volume. If you take some of those classic old school recordings, and we're talking things like Sincere is a great example, that will be at about -12 LUFS. So actually, like in terms of like you upload that album to Spotify, it gets turned down slightly, but it's a warm organic recording. Nothing was lost in the way that was mastered. It was done really nicely. If you play a track from that album against most of the stuff that's in the Beatport top 10 now, it'll be so fucking quiet because they've all been limited to the extreme. And like I know you've said to me before, like you end up kind of twiddling on your cue button and really cranking volumes up just to get your mix sounding okay. Like, you're at a point now where you'd struggle to mix up old and new, because if you take some of those old tracks, they're so quiet next to the new tracks that you're almost maxing out what you can do with your Q knob on your mixer. Do you know what I mean? And it's just a bit of a crazy position to be in when you consider that actually there isn't really a need. The only need for it is this kind of perceived need to compete in terms of volume with the next release, because nobody wants to be, and I've been that guy, because when I mastered Jazz Step FM, like the original Jazz Step FM, I mastered it myself, and I made the artistic decision that fuck it, like these recordings are really warm and organic sounding, they're very musical, I don't want to ruin them by really starting getting into limiting everything at the mix down stage and then going on to master and really over mastering it. So I was really gentle, and I actually used MJ Cole's Sincere because it was a kind of similar vibe, do you know what I mean, that kind of jazzy two-step vibe. It's a kind of similar vibe. I was like, I'll use that as my benchmark, so when I'm doing my mastering, I'm going to use that as my reference point for EQ and the way everything's been compressed and stuff. And actually I like to think that if you play my album next to Sincere, it stands up, not necessarily in terms of quality, that's a very subjective thing to say, but like in terms of the way it's EQ'd, mixed down and mastered, it would be somewhat similar, maybe not to MJ's level. I don't claim to be the next MJ Cole by any means, but it would be along those lines, right? The problem with that, and one of the bits of feedback that I got, and I've had it a few times in the past year where I've sent tracks to DJs, and they come back and they go, "Oh, this is basically say this isn't loud enough. This needs to be louder if you want me to play it." And that's just, it's just a fucking mental position to be in. And that's why when I released Jazzed Up FM Deluxe, one of the things I did was obviously we talked about this before, but I was talking about doing longer tracks with intros and outros for the DJs. I was thinking to myself, well, a lot of those DJs that were moaning that there weren't intros and outros are probably the same DJs that go, well, this isn't loud enough because it doesn't match up against the other stuff that they're buying from Beatport. So that's why that newer version of Jazzed Up FM was mastered a lot louder, and it killed me doing it, and I fucking hated it. And particularly, we've got the T-Towel, not that I don't like to critique my own work, but when you listen to it, like, I had to master it to the point where the bass kind of breaks up a little bit, and it broke my heart a little bit, but just one of those things. And for me, that really impacted me. I didn't like doing it, but a lot of people don't know any different, and are coming along and just hammering out tunes as loud as they can. And I know when I touched on this with you in the past, you said you made the correct observation. You were like, yeah, well, you know, when I play your tunes, I do have to bump them up a bit because they're not in line with what everyone else is doing. And I've kind of taken a sort of different stance on it recently, and I've been mastering stuff a little bit louder, but I still don't feel really comfortable doing it, knowing that I'm essentially just doing it for that really tiny cross section of the market. It's still even fucking buying MP3s, because most people aren't. Most people are going, I'm going to go and stream that. So it's kind of counterintuitive to then cater the tracks for the DJs, but as a producer and artist, you have to, if you want to get those plays. It's such a, just the whole discussion point is such a massive clusterfuck of different offshoots and reasons and things that need to be discussed, you know what I mean? But like, it's just, I don't know. I thought it was worth raising. It's not specific to Garage by any means. I'm not claiming it's only in Garage, because fuck me, drum and bass is so loud now. And for years, like, drum and bass has really been maxing it to the limit. I mean, I pinpointed Skrillex there as the poster child for the really brick wall limited tracks. But, you know, you could make the same argument for a lot of the drum and bass that even preceded him, really. There's been a lot of really loud drum and bass. It crosses over into tech house and bass house. It's everywhere now. I just don't like it. I'm not happy about it, and that's my grumble for the month.
So you've said a lot there, a lot. I don't even know how to unpick it all, because you said a lot. It's funny. So, no, don't be sorry at all. So it's funny. So you mentioned about drum and bass. So it's weird. I went to school with a guy who makes drum and bass, who I think he's done quite well for himself. He's called Inside Info. We're not like best mates by any means. Like, I haven't spoke to him for donkey's years, but I heard one of his tunes called Skyhook on a mix. Such a fucking wickedly savage drum and bass tune, and at a time I kind of reconnected with him a bit, and I was producing with a guy called Muad'Dib when we was doing the Orpheus stuff, and he was speaking to him as well to try and get some tips, because obviously he's had all this success, and it's like, you know, we're trying to put tunes out, and we're trying to make sure that they sound at a level that they need to for everyone else, and be successful. What advice would you have for mixing down? And literally the first thing he just said was, it needs to be as loud as fucking possible. That was like his first guidance. And this is a guy that's like, he's smashing it. Like, I remember when I googled him, I found a forum and someone had just pirated all of his tunes. Like, if that's not a measure of success, I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? But you know, to take the technical parts out of it, as a DJ, when I hear quiet tunes versus loud tunes, a lot of the time I do kind of feel like, no, this is wrong. Like, I know where I expect my gain knob to be, and if it goes past that, then it feels like that whoever's mixed that down hasn't done what everyone else is doing. And obviously there is no right and wrong with this stuff. It's completely subjective. But I almost feel like, well, that guy must not know what he's doing, because everyone else is doing it differently. And obviously we know that's not true with you at all. But what you start to get then, if I've got that mentality of, this guy's a newcomer, so he doesn't know how to make his tunes be loud, and then you as a veteran are sending out your music, and they might not have heard of you before, they may listen to it when it's quiet and go, oh, this guy don't know what he's doing, he can't even make it loud. And like, when you play the old school, I know that I will bump the treble and the mids up every time, and then crank the gain, and that will sound in my ears how I want it to sound in the mix. When I'm playing most tunes that I buy, I'll keep all of the EQs like at flat, like at 0, because I want to hear them the way that the artist intended, you know. And it would have to be really like awfully done, like a horrible mix down, or washed out, or there's too much tops on it, that I'll know it sounds wrong, and I'll start to fuck with it. But generally,
Yeah.
I know that I want to have it all as it sounds as it's come out the studio. It's just, but so I do think the old school mixdowns definitely are different to how they are now, and I would completely get why you'd reference Sincere for Jazz Step FM, because it completely makes sense. But I think, to your point of different speakers and the way that it sounds on different speakers, I mean, I've sat in studios before where guys would reference their tunes, and they wouldn't just reference another garage tune. They'd have, like, you know, a random pop song like Christina Aguilera in there, and then a banging garage tune, and then a drum and bass tune, and then the tune they're making, and they reference all of them next to each other on their big speakers, and then they'd get the shittest speaker they've got in the room and do the same reference again. And, you know, obviously to try and get it all at the same level. And I think it's that test, isn't it? When you come out the studio, the first thing we do is, how's this sound in the car? It's trying to do that without having to go through the effort of bouncing it down every time.
Test is legit.
But yeah,
do you know what is interesting? Interesting you say that, because Baker flagged a VST with me, the name of which escaped me, which is really shit, because it would be handy to... Let me see if I can find it. I've definitely got a message here from him somewhere. He's using this plugin that you put on the master bus of your mixer, and you can, apparently, I've not used it, so I'm just going on what he mentioned to me. Apparently you can switch between different setups, and it will somewhat... I mean, obviously, it's not going to be the same as if you bounce it, go and listen to it in the car, get another pair of speakers to plug it. But it emulates that kind of effect, so you can check your mix down across a range of different speakers, which is probably long overdue and a great tool. I might have to have a look into getting hold of it, actually, because it would definitely, I would argue, it would definitely be handy. I must have... Bear with me a second, I'm going to find it, because we've probably got people who are nerds like me listening in going, I'll be interested to know what that is. I might come back on it if I can find it.
I mean, it sounds like a good tool for a producer. The other weird one that you're talking about, how you knock it down for Spotify, but then Ned knock it down for you. It's like, you know, it's not, because you're obviously knocking where it is at peak, right? So, like, if you're trying to get every part of the tune up as loud as possible, when it gets knocked down, that's all going to be loud to the standard where it's been limited to. Whereas your tune, if you've mastered it at that point, then it's not going to be still hitting as loud as what those other tunes that have been knocked down, if you know what I mean. So you may still be kind of in the same realm. But
it will, because the algorithm and the LUFS reading, it isn't like peaks. It doesn't work based on. I mean, obviously there is an element of it where you can't have stuff clip in, and you would generally aim, like, you know, you've got like the mastered for Apple. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but like there is a series of master houses, and they're very selective. There are certain mastering houses that you can go to where they will master your track for you, and they will give you the option to master it specifically for Apple, and then it will go on to Apple with a little logo that says, you know, mastered for Apple. So it's like at an optimum level. I don't know anybody who does that. I think it's more the type of thing that majors do, because obviously they've got the money to do that, and it depends how fast you are about following an Apple, you know, horses for courses and all that. But in essence, no, what you're talking about is like, I don't want to get too fucking technical with it, because we could sit here and just gas about that all day. But it's not just based on peaks; it's the average level, in essence, of how a track hits. So the example that, and I talked about this at MJ Cole last time I saw him, going back a while now, and he used. It was one of the Kendrick Lamar albums as an example. It was not the most recent Kendrick Lamar album. I think it was the one before that. And the mastering engineer, so they'd done the mastering, but like usually most mastering engineers will leave the limit in to the very last stage. I know when I used to do a lot of work with Kettridge, he would leave the limiter to the very last thing he did. So he would do all of everything with his exciter and stereo imaging and anything else that he was doing to get the track sounding nice and rounded. And I had a really, obviously, Stu's a good mate of mine, so obviously I had a good working relationship with him, and actually I always used to get him to do me two versions. So I would have a track that I could put on the download sites, which was limited quite heavily, which was loud as fuck, which would compete. So if you get my album 27 months, if you buy the deluxe version off a Beatport or off a Bandcamp, please go and do that if you haven't already. That's quite loud, and Stu was a brilliant mastering engineer, so it's mastered brilliantly. But if you then go onto Spotify and stream that very same album, the masters are exactly the same, they just aren't limited in the same way. Do you know what I mean? It's been done in a way that actually that algorithm that Spotify's got built into it doesn't have to do anything, because it just goes, right, this is a perfect level. So you're going to listen to that, and you're going to hear it as I wanted it to be, and then you're going to have a tune by Skrillex, which is at -5 LUFS, which all the Spotify algorithm has done is turn it down massively, and it'll be the same volume. It will just sound very sterile and arguably nasty next to a relatively organic, natural sounding recording. That's the point I'm getting at. That's what really jars me personally. And I know I'm an audiophile and I'm a fucking nerd, so most people don't even give a shit. Most people wouldn't even notice this. It seems kind of crazy to me. And I had a conversation with one of the DJs that came back to me and was just like, it was on Sweet Love. Oh yeah, this is brilliant. I love it. It's really quiet. It's a pre-master. And I went, well, no, actually, it's the master. But Brendan, the track was Brendan Mills, right? Brendan's got like 2 million followers on Spotify. So we knew when we recorded that the vast majority of people that were going to consume that track were going to do it via Spotify. So it was counterintuitive to then go and master the shit out of it for the 10 people that will buy it off of Beatport, knowing that everybody else that's going to hear it on Spotify would then be hearing a bastardized version of it when they could just have it exactly as it should sound. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm making sense, because obviously it makes sense to me.
I get what you're saying, and it's like, but I think a lot of it's taste, and I think if your ears as finely tuned as your ears, you're going to be offended by it. I don't know why you don't focus on Tidal. Like, surely Tidal should be the main place you're distributing if you're so hell bent on having quality.
Because nobody fucking uses it, mate. I don't know anybody that uses Tidal. Let's be honest. Like, I'd love to. They would pay me slightly more than Spotify do as well. But like, I don't know anybody that uses Tidal. Everyone I know has got most people that I know have got a free Spotify account. Maybe 1 in 10 has one that they pay for. I mean, this is that whole thing is a conversation we've had to death. Probably don't need to touch on that again. But yeah, it's. I mean, even Tidal would be the same. Like, they're not at the same level. There is a website, and I was looking at it. Be it I'm that much of a nerd. There is a website, and it lists all of the optimum level for all of those different services, and they all have a LUFS reading that is considerably below what everybody in Garage is mastering to. So just about everybody that's mastered, like, you go through that Beatport top 10, all those singles are loud as fuck, and if that's what you're going for, great. But though people aren't hearing them at that volume when they listen back on Spotify or Tidal or Deezer, they're hearing them turned down, and it just, I don't know. I mean, obviously, like, I've read this as a conversation piece just because it's like an interesting one. There's a lot of levels to it. I'm not expecting it to fucking change everyone in Garage's mind and for everyone to start producing and mixing things and mastering them slightly quieter. But if it kind of prompts the thought to a few other people who might not have considered it, then good. It's kind of achieved its purpose. Because I feel like it's one of those subjects that's just, it's there in the background to be discussed, and like, I feel like as an artist, as a producer, as an audio engineer, as a real audiophile, like, I almost feel like it's my duty to kind of point that out for anybody who is in a similar position to me but might maybe not have kind of picked up on it. Just, I don't know, it just seems crazy to me. It seems crazy to me. We're all, it's ridiculous to me that we should be focusing on making the best track we can, and the best track that we can is based on the subjective content of it, right? So it's the musical elements, it's the sound design, it's the timbre, it's the texture. It shouldn't be how loud the track is. Do you know what I mean? And I don't disagree with anything you said, because yeah, absolutely, I can understand why someone maybe in your position listens to something that's a bit quieter and goes, oh, this geezer doesn't know what he's doing. The irony being that there's a good chance that geezer does know what he's doing, more so than the people who are just fucking running their entire track through a limiter and compressing the shit out of it. Alas, it just seems crazy to me that there's too much of a focus on how loud this is, and is this loud enough to fit in, when what we should be doing is going, is this track good enough? Does it sound nice? Because I would argue that a lot of those I don't want to be negative. I know we always try and push the positive, and it's ultimately negativity breeds negativity. Right? I want to be positive, but there's a lot of music around, and there's even still a lot of music around in Garage that, like, it kind of turns me off because it's too loud. It's been processed in a way that doesn't work for me. Alas, I understand that obviously it's working for more people that are buying it. So I get that there's kind of a trade-off there. I just feel like there's probably a middle ground to be had. And maybe things will balance out in time. Maybe there will be enough nerds like me that will come along and start trying to push the envelope back the other way. Maybe things will just get louder and louder. Maybe it'll just end up being a fucking big block of white noise.
I mean, look, Rob, in terms of, like, with intelligence, right? You've got like an upper echelon of like 5%, let's say, for argument's sake. You got a lower echelon of really heavily stupid people down in the lower 5%, and then everyone else is in the middle, right? And that is your general market. Now, I'm talking about intelligence there. That can be translated to musical taste and musical interpretation. There's only going to be a small fraction of people that are noticing the nuance that you're noticing. And I think that you are doing yourself a disjustice, a disservice, by mastering to what you think's right rather than what would perform better. That's just my opinion.
One could argue, based on what you've just said, that as somebody who's kind of aware of the problem where Joe Public might not be, maybe, and I might be wrong, feel free to disagree, I'm sure you will disagree with me, maybe people like me who are aware of it, who do this full time, who make music and try to deliver the best product we can, maybe it is our responsibility as the people making the music to go, well, hang on a minute, we don't need to be doing this. Let's all collectively just be sensible about how much compression and limiting we're doing and make music that sounds nice. And even if nobody consciously is aware of it, a few years down the time, maybe Joe Public, who fall in that 90% sweet spot in the middle, will be like, oh yeah, we stepped in the right direction here. I mean, I made the observation earlier, right, that there was a dip in the quality of music around that time when everybody switched from hardware to software and had to kind of relearn how to do it. And, there are certain producers who never kind of managed to make that transition successfully. I'm not going to name names, but I've talked to some of them who've kind of said, oh yeah, when I had my hardware set up and I was triggering my Akai S3000, everything sounded sweet and I could mix it sound really nice. I've never kind of managed to find that sweet spot again. Yeah, so there was legitimately a point there where the quality dipped. I've forgotten where I was going with that. I completely lost my trail of thought. Went off on a fucking tangent. I'm like, but in essence, like it kind of took people in my position who were making the music to kind of bump it back up again, and those, potentially the Joe Public that was buying those recordings that were a bit shit in the middle didn't necessarily appreciate the dip in quality. Do you see what I'm getting at? So maybe those same people aren't appreciating what's going on with this whole loudness war. I mean, I don't know.
Well, mate, I hope it doesn't leave you as a starving artist. I hope it doesn't leave you as a starving artist. That's all I'm going to say.
I've kind of begrudgingly backtracked, and recent releases that I've done have been a bit louder just to kind of fall in line. But I just love doing it, and that's why I wanted to sit here like a miserable middle-aged git and moan about it. So thank you for humouring me with your patience.
It's good. I love talking about things where we've got a complete difference of opinion on it. So especially when you know all the technical shit on it, and I know what my heart says, and then it's kind of
I get it.
Brain versus feeling.
I do get it from your perspective. I do get it from your perspective as a consumer that it's a pain in the arse to be presented with something which is out of kilter with the other stuff that you've got. I do get that. I don't know. I just I just hope that it's a pity. When we talked before and you kind of mentioned the UK Garage Committee and kind of outlawing and blacklisting certain people. It'd be good if we could have like a UK Garage Committee that addressed these issues and went, right, everybody, from this point forward, we're mastering to minus 11, 12, whatever the rate would be. That would be nice. Appreciate it.
I'd put you in charge of that, Rob, for sure. I'm just going to flag, we're about 5 minutes off of 2 hours, mate. We need to get into the feedback, I think.
We've got some feedback. I've noted down the feedback. I may have missed one or two bits because there was definitely more than this, but I think I cherry-picked some of the ones that made me laugh. Zelgion, you picked out the Venezuelan duos. I can't remember what the track was called last time, but it was brilliant, and I had conversations with several people about it because everyone that listened to it seemed to enjoy it. They responded on our YouTube channel, said, so cool to have been featured on this show. Thanks very much, Mr. BrainZ and Mr. Phonetix, for your genuine and funny opinions. I'm assuming they're referring to your comment about them being born for Instagram. I'll be hitting your SoundCloud direct messages to clear some things up if you don't mind. I don't know about you, I never got a message on SoundCloud. So Zelgion, if you are listening, do give us a shout because we applaud the interaction.
They didn't slide into my DMs. Their DMs were probably flooded with young women fawning after them. So
Why do you say that? I seldom check my DMs on SoundCloud, to be fair. I seldom log into SoundCloud. I really should be better at it. Next piece of feedback, are we happy to just jump on?
Yeah, please crack on, mate. Crack on.
He said, another great episode, guys. Nice to have a garage podcast. Lots of nice track recommendations in there too. Thank you, Richie P. You're almost welcome to recommendations. Top fellow. If you're not following Richie P on YouTube, highly recommended. And not just because he did a recent Best of Phonetix mix, although that does add a tick in the box to him. Baker left us a comment on the YouTube channel. Another epic show, lads. Thank you again so much for your support and comments. You're welcome, mate. Spot on with EP comments on Warms in Brains. It's definitely a mellow one. Thank you for the feedback session and reading my comment. So happy to contribute to the show in some way. And we love that. Get involved. Do you know what I mean? I feel we've got a number of listeners that don't get involved. Please do get involved. It's always good conversation prompts for us.
For the levels we're getting, this sort of engagement is good. Thank you to everyone that listens. Appreciate you taking the time to get this far.
And thank you, Brock UK, for leaving my favourite comment of last month, which was simply 3 words: Venezuelan Beaver Garage. And I don't think that needs us to say anything else. It's just great. It did tickle me when I saw that.
Well, I don't know what they put in the water up in Runcorn, but I love you for it, Davey Donkdown, aka Brock UK, legend, hold tight moron. So, if you want to get in touch with us, hit us on any of the channels, be it on the YouTubes, on the SoundClouds. Just drop us a comment, we'll read it. Also, you can go old school, rather than carrier pigeon. You can send us an email, feedback@intheukgarage.com. We read every word, and we may read you out here on the show.
If you do have a carrier pigeon, I'd love to receive a message by carrier pigeon. Just throwing that out there now.
Your dog would have it, mate. That's why you don't want that.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yes, you would. Don't even start.
We made it though. We made it all the way there. It's been great chatting to you, mate.
As always, mate. Yeah. And we didn't even touch on the fact that we went to the House and Garage Orchestra.
Oh my God! My God!
Yeah, that was probably a conversation piece. Maybe we'll talk about that in the gassing bit next month.
I mean, that could have been a whole thing, yeah. It was so long ago now.
Yeah.
Lifford, my days. That guy raised the roof. It was so much respect for him after that. So much respect for him.
I was epically impressed with Shelley Nelson as well. I thought she absolutely smashed it. I know we had a conversation on the day when we were there, didn't we? But like something in your eyes, like it sounded like the record. Could have been playing the record, to be fair. Maybe they had like a cappella. No, she killed it. She did great. Interesting one.
Oh, well, we'll have to wrap it up there, though, mate. Say it, as always, just great talking to you, great catching up. And I guess, so I'll see you next time.
Indeed, mate. We should do it more often and not 8 weeks apart next time. Then we won't have quite so many tunes to pick from. Apologies to anybody who produced a corker that didn't get a mention this month. We'll make it up to you down the line.
For sure. All right. Well, I guess we'll see you next time. Big ups, boss.
Indeed, mate. Big up to you. Big up everyone listening. Shout out and take care.
Take it easy.
You get me? In the garage with Phonetix